Good morning everyone. I'm Francesca, co-founder and director of Vastari Group, which is a UK-based company that helps museums and collectors to work together for temporary exhibitions. So the first step for a collector towards working with the museum and then to look after their collection is to digitize it and to be able to manage it online. This is for two main sets of reasons. One is to be able to keep track of art as you would with any other of your assets. And art, of course, can be at your home. As a collector, you might have more than one. It can be stored in a warehouse or in a free port. So it's particularly important to know where everything is at all times. But also art is not just an asset. Art pieces are matter of fact beautiful objects that someone loves looking at, so it's also important when it comes to art to be able to show the pieces and to look at them, and you might as a collector want to show it to your friends or people you meet, but it's also important to be able to compare what you have with pieces that you might see at an art fair, like around here, in a gallery or at a museum. And the first players within the art world to understand the importance of digitizing the collection were, of course, dealers, because they have to manage a large amount of stock, so they have to deal with a lot more paintings than a collector, depending on the collector, usually does. But it's now good practice for any serious and professional collector to use a collection management system and to catalog their art. When the aim is to work with museum, this needs to be done professionally to be able to meet the standards, so that once the connection is established, then the pieces are already catalogued and information are there for museums in the right format and with enough details. So there's several reasons why it's good for a collector to share art with museums. The first one, which I haven't even mentioned because it goes without saying, is the pleasure to be able to share what you found and what you love with a wider audience, and to be able to see it within an institution, having someone that is a museum professional and endorses your piece, saying it's good enough to go with our collection, we wish we had bought it ourselves, but you got there first, is quite flattering for a collector. And of course, then when art is seen within an academic and institutional context, this affects the profile of the work quite significantly, which has an impact on the market value of the work as well. Now, it's really hard to give a precise estimate of the price increase or the impact of lending a work or seeing a work in an exhibition on the price, but because the only source of information in this regard is auction price results, and you would need to have the same piece being sold at auction right before and after an exhibition, which is very rare, and also even then there's so many variables that it's very hard to give an idea. But at the opening conference of the European Art Fair this year in March, it has been estimated by the director of the Bahrain Museum that the price increase is between 20 and 30% of the original value, depending on the type of exhibition and the venue that shows the piece. Then, of course, another fairly important point is that the museum covers any cost that well, for transport, but also any maintenance cost that usually would be on the collector, as well as sometimes, not always, but quite often offering to, as a gesture to thank the collector, to perform small conservation works on the piece if it's needed. And then, of course, there's the research and publication aspects. Of course, each exhibition, or most of the exhibitions really, have a catalogue that is published, and the inclusion in the catalogue significantly increases the prestige of the piece. To give you an example, the publications are always listed in the CV of the work, or in any auction catalogue, or a commercial publication, because they do affect the importance and the price of the work. But also there's the opportunity, as the catalogue is published and produced by experts in the field, to learn about your piece from someone who knows a lot more about it, as is an expert in that specific type of art, or on that specific artist. And the last point I'm going to touch upon is tax reliefs. I'll bring you the example of the UK, because we work a lot with the UK, and they really are trying to motivate collectors to lend and share what they have. So in the UK, in most jurisdictions as well, if you make an art piece available to the public for a minimum of 28 days per year, you are entitled to claim tax breaks for inheritance tax and capital gain if you are to sell the work. And of course, you can always open your home to the public, but it's the easiest and safest way to share. It's really to lend a piece to an exhibition and to let people see it and access it at a museum rather than at your home. So up until we set up Vastari, the process of lending to museums, or for museums to find pieces in private collections, was managed entirely offline, which is still happening, but this presents a number of inefficiencies. First problem is that the chain of communication is particularly slow. It usually takes for a museum to phone up the auction house that has sold the piece and ask them to forward an official letter to the current owner to see if they're interested in collaborating on the exhibition. And clearly there's no guarantee of success for the curators, because the collector might as well be interested in keeping the piece on the walls, or the piece might not be available for a number of reasons. And museums are therefore kind of not very keen on working with private collectors, just because it takes so much time to track down the current owner, and the time might not be spent in a fruitful way if then this does not result in an exhibition loan. And at the same time, it's very difficult for a collector to know at the right time that an exhibition is planned. So the overall average time to put together an exhibition is 2 to 4 years, which means it's usually at least 2 years in advance. You should know that the exhibition has been planned, and you should be in touch with the museums to arrange for your piece to be included in the exhibition. And this is very hard, because museums are very protective of their IP, and they don't disclose what they're planning well ahead, unless you can do it in a secure way. This makes it particularly difficult for them to work together. And another element which kind of discourages these collaborations from happening is that usually the third parties that are in between the collector and the museum have a vested interest, a commercial interest, and museums, because of the code of ethics, are uncomfortable with acknowledging that they are helping the collectors to increase the value of what they own. And at the same time, collectors don't necessarily want, if they're not planning on selling the pieces straight away or selling it at all, they don't like for a dealer or an auction house to know what they own, because then they will be chased for selling the pieces, so that the third party can benefit from the price increase that is generated through the exhibition. So the way we try to to solve these issues is by building an online platform where collectors can upload the works they have. So it's essentially a collection management system, what we mentioned. You can upload an image of what you have and relevant details such as the artist's name, the medium, the size, the date, and information about the provenance or the authenticity certificate, and all the information that a museum would need to have in order to consider a piece, as well as information that you should know about your own pieces. And collectors will be able to access their whole collection on the website, and then they have the option to choose for each and every piece whether they want to show it to museums or not. And by selecting using the show or hide function, they make sure that their piece will or will not appear within the search results that of the searches operated by curators. So the interface on the curator's side is essentially a search engine, and then when they get the search results, they'll see all the pieces that match the criteria they used in their searches, but they won't be able to see who the owners are or whether two pieces are from the same collection. They'll just see everything that is relevant and available on the database, and then they'll be able to contact the owner by pressing a button. So there's no email addresses either. It's all absolutely anonymous and confidential, and once you contact the owner, then they will see if there's an interest for a collaboration, and then eventually when both parties are comfortable, they'll disclose their identities. Now collectors can not only share the pieces with museums, but they can also see what museums are looking for. So what we were saying before, the museums are not particularly happy to share information about the exhibitions they're planning unless they know it's only collectors that might have an interest in lending that see it. So what they do on the Vastari platform is they publish requests for exhibitions, so they can say they're working on a Picasso exhibition for 2018 and they're looking for a piece from a specific period, and you as a collector will see this call for entry and you'll be able to respond and say, I have a Picasso that might be relevant, would you like to see a picture, would you be interested in lending it, would you have a budget to do so. So this is one way museums and collectors can work together, which has been done in the past quite often. And another very interesting dimension that is becoming increasingly important is that of actually working by lending your entire collection as an exhibition. Museums are very interested in borrowing a private collection rather than just a piece from a private collection, because, well, showing pieces that haven't been seen by the public for a long time can very much increase the visitor number, so which is of course one of their goals in producing exhibitions. Just to give you an example, which is a bit of an extreme one, but the painting, the screen by Munch was sold at Sotheby's in 2012 for the record price of 120 million. And before it was sold, which happened in New York, it was shown at the Sotheby's Gallery in Bond Street, London, and for 4 days. And during those 4 days, they had 5,200 visitors going there just to see it, because they didn't know when the next chance to see it would have been. So this is the potential that like very particular work would have to attract visitors, and the same goes with for a collection which has a lot more works that haven't been seen in a long time. Then what's also very appealing for a museum is that the logistics and the paperwork involved are much easier to manage when it comes to working with a private individual rather than another institution. There's a lot less bureaucracy, and things can move on faster. As well as, of course, being able to show a private collection. It's an interesting spin for a museum to be able to share the story of a collector and see how someone who's not necessarily a professional decided to put together a collection, what the reasons are behind that, and how it's been done over the years. Of course, what's in it for a collector, and what's good in terms of then being able to look after your collection is that, as I mentioned before, there's going to be research done about your collection, but also the museums are very happy to pay a lending fee when it comes to a whole collection, whereas for individual objects they normally just cover the price and of all the costs involved. And this means that the collection turns into a revenue-generating asset, and this revenue can be used for the maintenance costs, which are quite high, I'm sure all collectors would know, and also for further acquisitions, so you can add new pieces, perhaps with the advice of the museum curators that you're working with. And in terms of what we do and how we help collectors to work on exhibitions, there's two ways we can consult on this. On the one hand, we can have a more lean approach where we help the collectors to prepare an exhibition proposal which describes in details their collection and basically has the right format for a museum curator to immediately understand what the collection is about, what's interesting about it, and see if it's something that might fit within their exhibition programming. And then, of course, we have a very extended network of museums. We work with over 1,700 curators worldwide. So we would also be able to direct the collector towards the right venues that might be interested and might give the right visibility to the collection. Alternatively, with a bit more of an upfront cost, we can connect the collector with an independent curator who would effectively turn the collection into an exhibition. So they would build a catalogue, they will think about a narrative, they will produce all informative material and basically prepare the collection to be displayed. So once it's a ready-made exhibition, what's nice about it is that it can be toured to more than one venue, whereas if you were to work with a specific museum to turn your collection into an exhibition, then they would do the work and the intellectual property would stay with them rather than with the collectors. So that's the difference. And once the collection has been created or packaged, our team can then help with a number of different aspects that are relevant to producing an exhibition, which is, well, first to find an appropriate venue, as I mentioned, then we can help with the messaging for a specific audience, depending on what the aim of the collector is in getting their collection out there, and to with registrar services. So of course, especially if it's the first time that a collector works with a museum, I did mention the paperwork involved as there's a lot less bureaucracy, but still you need to comply with all the requests from the museums, which have a very specific way to work. So you might need some assistance with that. And then there's another element, which is suppliers that might help you with everything that has to do with audience engagement, so audio guides or interactive media support, and the exhibition catalog production as well, which can be by the curator or by multiple writers that might be more experienced in a specific area, or the expert or specific artist, as well as helping the collector understand what the best model is to to work with the museum financially, so whether that's a revenue split on the ticketing or whether it's an upfront lending fee that they are going to ask. So there's just many elements that that we can help with and that should be considered when working with museums. But it's basically a win-win situation for the museum and for the collectors. So we do try and encourage these collaborations to happen more and more often. And the beauty of doing this through an online platform is that we can work with a collection in Bahrain and arrange for it to go to New York or Tokyo or Sydney, because it's all done via the internet. So that was on a very superficial level, a description of what we do. It's quite specific, so I'm imagining you might have some questions for me. Or Janet, do you want to take the questions or to ask me questions?
It's not on. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So, lovely, good. Thank you so much for your presentation, which was fascinating. I'm sure there will be questions in the audience, so I'll be handing the microphone round. Please put your hand up if you have a question to ask.
Thanks. How long did it take to develop the platform?
You mean the actual tech or to?
Both.
Okay, it was 1 year just of tech development, and now it's been running. The product has been launched 3 years ago. So it took 3 years to get to having 1,700 curators and around 500 different collections of various sizes.
And how worried are you about hacking or security?
Well,
Since it's online and not.
Yeah. We are, of course, very concerned about our security. We host images and information on different servers that it shouldn't be possible to hack. But what we thought is that we all know it's always possible to hack things, so we don't store any personal information about the clients besides their email addresses. So there's no location or addresses or phone numbers attached to the information of each piece. So even if someone was to have access to the information, then there's not that much they could do with them. And all the images are watermarked so that they cannot be screenshotted and use it for commercial purposes or any purpose. And we also ask the collectors to use low resolution images, so there's less details and less information available for whoever was to try and misuse the system.
Which factors you take into consideration when you select an artwork? If a collector is willing to, like the collector gets in touch with you and he or she wants to hand the artwork to you guys, what are the factors that you take into consideration?
Well, we basically we don't vet the art that is on the platform. We think that as long as a collector is serious enough to take the time to digitize the collection, which is a very time-consuming process, and pay us a fee to be able to share the information, because we found it's really hard to predict what a museum might be interested in. There are the obvious masterpieces, but sometimes they're looking after, works by other artists that are not necessarily as famous, or they would come across something that could be useful to describe the cultural context within which a much more famous piece was produced. We had requests for all sorts of things, so we feel like it's better to share more rather than less, and then of course the curators will be able to restrict and filter their search results. So the answer is, as a collector, you can upload everything you have and you think it's museum worthy, and we trust you to make that decision. Because also, I didn't mention, we're working with a very wide range of art, and not just art, it's also design. We work with science museums, natural history museums, so it would be very hard for our team to provide the right level of expertise on all the disciplines. We'd rather see ourselves like connectors, and then it's up to the two parties to be reasonable and have a fruitful conversation about possible collaborations.